The third. Now, I have another difference between the two, but I don't know if this one is really relevant because it completely comes from socionics in that case. And it's not, I don't think there is anything about that. I'm not an expert at all, so I don't know. But I don't think that there is something in MBTI about this. It's the concept of PoLR, the PoLR function, which is the 7th function, the third non-ego function. And PoLR means point of least resistance in socionics. And the point of least resistance is supposed to be the function that, as the name says, as its name says, the function that you really can't stand. So for INTJs, it is FE, extroverted feeling, and for ENTJs, introverted sensing, SI. So INTJs couldn't stand if this was true. I mean, as I said, I don't know if this has any relevance actually, but take it or leave it, it's as you want. But INTJs theoretically in that model, according to socionics, don't like at all extroverted feeling, and ENTJs don't like at all introverted sensing. Now, I could go with the definition of the functions and say they don't like the definition of the function, which is the function itself. But I'm just gonna go with the stereotype and my own perception of the function because I think it's gonna be more interesting for you. So SI would be typically routine and sheep-like thinking and doing things for the sake of doing them. And FE would be, it's similar, but it's because I don't know why FE and SI are similar, but they are similar in my mind at least, because both want to attain a certain level of concordance with society. If you take, for example, an ENFJ, and ENFJ doesn't use SI, but they look like, at least to me, they look like, for example, an ESTJ in the sense that they are both society-oriented. FE users and SI users are pro-society because, I don't know why, because it's, you know, if you go into the descriptions of the functions, you will probably see why, because extroverted feeling has a tendency to relate to other people, and for this reason to go with them and be part of a group, etc., etc. And introverted sensing, because it's sheep-like and oriented towards routine, they tend to do things that most people do, and for this reason you will often find them in groups, etc., for different reasons than extroverted feelers, but the result is the same. I think most type 6s on the Enneagram I think most type 6s on the Enneagram are ISTJs and ISFJs. So that's why I say introverted sensing is really routine oriented and sheep-like oriented, because, you know, because the differences between the two would be not liking extroverted feeling at all, versus not liking interpreted sensing at all, which means that INTJs can't stand, since these two are similar, as I said, it's a little bit complicated, but INTJs cannot stand people who want them to talk about themselves, I think, because that's what extroverted feelers do. ESFJs and ENFJs, they want to talk about you. They're selfless, and they ask, what did you do? I don't know. What did you do today? What did you eat today if they're ESFJ? And what did you do today if they're ENFJ? They will ask you things about you. And INTJs, I think, since they can't stand FE theoretically, according to Socionics, well, they don't like that. They don't like when you ask them about themselves. They don't like to share things about themselves, etc. While ENTJs, on the other hand, since they can't stand SI, what does a dominant SI user do? A dominant SI user is oriented towards routine and a very sheep-like. I'm not insulting, even if it looks like I am. I'm not insulting all the SI users. I'm just saying what I see from them and from the introverted sensing function. There is a stereotype about ENTJs that says that ENTJs, they wear suits all the time, and they wake up at 7 a.m. and they take their car and they go to work and they spend all the time at work and then they go back. I don't think this stereotype is true. I think it describes practically us, all the SJs actually. Even ESFJs would fit more into this description than ENTJs, because ENTJs are extroverted sensors and extroverted thinkers, which means that they are in the moment and they are completely oriented towards acting. And this is not what is an ENTJ. This is an introverted sensor functioning, going to the same job all the every day and all your life. This is an introverted sensing functioning. Okay, this is not TESE. This is SI and to some extent FE. And if the person is ESFJ or ISFJ, for sure they will, of course, do that, because they have both. They have SI and FE. So it's impossible that you find on Earth an ESFJ or ISFJ that doesn't follow a certain routine. This is completely impossible. By definition, these two types are completely wired to follow routine. They have both the SI function and the extroverted feeling function. So what was I saying? I was saying that ENTJs don't like people who follow a certain routine. They don't like. I don't mean like that. I don't mean that like they're not perceivers. It's not like they change what they do all the time. What I mean by they don't like SI, it means that they don't like when people tell them that something is impossible when they know it's possible. I think it's one of the good examples. For example, I'm not gonna spoil myself, but I have a lot of ideas of inventions, like many of you, I guess. at least some of you, about things that I want to create and implement one day, maybe have a company or something like that. And you have the SI users who have this homeostasis that they want to keep and to maintain this routine, you know. And when you tell them, for example, I was talking to an INTJ and I was talking about jetpacks or something like that. I said to him, it would be cool if we had jetpacks. It would be much faster to go from point A and point B. And you know, he didn't agree because, you know, you're gonna say it's because he's an INTJ, but what in his INTJ functioning makes him disagree with me? It's his introverted sensing. His introverted sensing is oriented towards keeping things as they were before, and so yeah, so that's what he says that. But back to the ENTJ, the ENTJ has polar point of least resistance introverted sensing, which means that he doesn't like that. I didn't like it, but not to the extent of completely hating it. But ENTJs want to surround themselves with competent people, and competence, it's not the opposite of SI, but they also want smart people. When an ENTJ actually talks about competence, I think they also mean smart. And SI users, I don't say they're smart, they're not smart. They are smart in the things that they have learned. But if you want them to think about new things, they cannot, because they don't have this introverted intuition that you need to think about new things. So yeah, I think INTJs, the fourth difference would be, if it's actually based on anything, would be that INTJs don't like it when you ask them about their emotions or you ask them how they feel, while ENTJs don't like it when you contradict them. You contradict them for no reason or on something they know, which a lot of SI users do. I don't know why. The SI users think they have all the knowledge on the planet just because, you know, introverted sensing this has the same arrogance that NI has, but towards past things and concrete things. So if you talk about, I want to create this, the SI user is going to contradict you just for no reason, because they have suspicious minds about new things, which is why most of them are type 6s on the Enneagram, by the way. Type 6s are typically paranoid people who are suspicious of everything, and if you present them a new project, they're gonna pick it apart, and for no reason. It's their default mode. They do this like it's normal, you know. They think it's normal to criticize everything that comes that's completely new. It's like they cannot think of the possibility of this being actually a good invention. And when a person so that would be the fourth difference, for what it's worth. And the last difference is because I've wrote down some things. I actually wrote a script, but I didn't read it because but well, first of all, it takes too much time to write a script, and there are things that come into my mind when I read the script. So anyway, come to my mind. Yes, I have one example about INTJs. So this is a global observation that you can see about them. They tend to miss occasions because they have inferior SE, as I said, and they have dominant NI, which means that they have a subjective worldview, and they lack the capacity or even the envy. They don't like looking at things as they are. So an INTJ, for example, he might not realize, for example, that he can take a shorter path to school because his NI created a different map from reality in his mind, and he's following this subjective map, while actually from an objective point of view there is a shorter path. I don't know if you see what I mean, but the person actually distorts reality, and this INTJ will think he's taking the shorter path while actually he's not. And if an ESFP walks with him, he will tell him, you're taking a longer path than me. There is actually a shorter path that you can take. Just follow me. And the INTJ, because they lack this experience of things, they lack this SE perception, could just take this longer path for years before realizing at some point, maybe when the SE is more developed, that there is actually a shorter path. And it's not something you can see. In this example, it could be something that's very visible, but only for someone who takes the time to watch around him, which INTJs with weak SE don't do. And another point for ENTJs would be that, yes, the Enneagram types, some correlations. INTJs most often are 5s on the Enneagram and 6s, and there are also 1s, but less. And I think that's all. And ENTJs are 8s, sometimes 6s, but much less than INTJs, and 3s. So if you are a 3 or an 8, you're probably, if you're between the two, you're probably an ENTJ, while if you're a 6 or a 5, you're probably an INTJ. Also, I wanted to say that ENTJs are, but I think I already said that, so. Yes, sometimes ENTJs will have but I think this is more true for type A's, but maybe it's also true for other ENTJs, I don't know. Sometimes, probably the tertiary extroverted sensing, ENTJs will have an aggressive, in-the-moment physical attitude. A lot of them, for example, play martial, I don't know if you play, you practice a martial art, I don't know. A lot of ENTJs do physical things on a daily basis, while INTJs, they don't like having this aggressive, in-the-moment attitude because they think it's a lack of self-control, I think. There are probably INTJs that are going to disagree with me on that, but the textbook INTJ normally would be like that. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say on the subject. like other people say, feel free to comment or say anything you want. For example, if you're an INTJ and you completely disagree with all the points that I've said about INTJs, well, just let me know. Or if you're an ENTJ and you disagree with ENTJ things I said. And thank you for watching.